next demo up today is by Mike La Charite, and our CEO of the ISVA. I am really excited about this one. I've heard some chatter behind the scenes, and I've heard there are homemade tortillas involved in his demo today. So please welcome Mike.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Regional Food Showcase. Super excited to have you here with us, and in particular I'm really excited to demo this dish. It's got a lot of significance for me. It's called Panuchos Veracruzanos. And if you know anything about cuisine, really globally, but especially it seems in Mexico, every region, even though they all make, they'll make the same dish, say, a taco or a gordita, they all have their own little spin, their own little regional emphasis on it. And this dish is certainly no exception to that. This one actually comes from my wife's grandmother, who's from Veracruz. She actually passed away a couple of weeks ago, so it's really an honor for me to be able to present this today. I had the opportunity probably 7 or 8 years ago to be in the kitchen with her. And this is one of the dishes she showed us. It's one that my mother-in-law has talked about eating growing up, and I know it's a favorite in their family. And so it's slightly intimidating, but I'm really excited to take it on today. So we're going to start with our refried beans. Cooking beans, legumes, pulses works really well in the sous vide. What's great about it is you don't have to pre-soak the night before. Typically, most of them are a 2-to-1 ratio, and they all have different times, just depending on the structure of the different bean. So I'm going to show you a real easy way to just taste as you go. And leave access for that so you know when they're done. We're going to use pinto beans today, and it's really simple, 2-to-1 ratio. So I got some pinto beans here, about 8 ounces, and I'm going to just pour in double that weight in water. And then we're going to add some salt. Now typically with this recipe, the traditional way, there's some onion in here that gets boiled as well. And it would still cook at this temperature, but because it's in there so long, I didn't want to deal with the gases coming out of the onion. So I'm just using a little bit of air-dried shallot powder to give it the flavor, but then we don't have to worry about the whole chunks of onion in there. So we're going to add the salt, and we're going to add the onion powder. That's it. Super simple. Salt, if I didn't mention, it is 1% of the water weight. So about 4 grams went in there. And now instead of sealing this like I usually would, because I want to taste along, just going to let the water displacement method do its thing. And then we're going to secure it to magnets so it leaves the top of the bag open. That way we can fish out a bean or two every hour or so and taste until it gets to the texture that we want. That's it. We're going to let that go, fish out a bean every hour or two to just taste and see where it's at. So the nice thing is I'm at 194 here for my temperature, which is 90 Celsius. That happens to be the perfect temperature to do hard-boiled eggs. If you've never done a sous vide hard-boiled egg, what I love about them at this temperature is the yolks are still super soft and creamy, which is a really hard result to get when you're boiling them. So we're going to go 194. Timing is critical with the eggs, so we're going to go 20 minutes exact. We're going to pull them out and put them in an ice bath. Now you can do this right before you make the dish when the beans are almost done. I find that the eggs slice easier when they're cold, so I'm going to cook them now. I'm going to chill them in an ice bath, and then we'll slice them up before we put the final dish together. I also love this silicone strainer, or steamer, especially when we're doing a lot of eggs. I'm only doing 3 here, but it helps keep them all in one place so they don't bounce around in the current. All right, so we'll come back to those in 20 minutes, and then let's do our pickled onions. All right, now we'll get our pickled onions in the bath. These are super simple, and they're a little different than traditional pickled onions that you may have had, which are often red onions, and they have a really nice acidic bite. We dilute the vinegar with water here, so you get the acid, but it's much more mellow, and it's going to really just blend in with the panuchos and add a little bit of that pickle flavor without being overpowering. So all I have is just a white onion here sliced up into good, nice medium thick slices. We're going to add half, actually I'm going to do the spices first. So I have some peppercorns, I have some kosher salt, a few cloves, and I also put a little fennel seed in here. So we are going to dump that in. Got some fresh thyme and oregano sprigs. And then this is optional, but she used it, so I'm going to. 1 bay leaf. And then this is just half regular distilled white vinegar and half just water. So we are going to just fill that up. Now normally I would cook onions about 183 to 185, but because we have a bath going at 194, why not just use the same? This is one of the really nice benefits of sous vide, having that flexibility. In the temperature, it doesn't have to be one certain temperature. You're going to get the same result. So I'm going to throw these in the bath with the beans and the eggs. They'll cook for about 30 minutes. Then I'm going to chill them down. You can, again, do this last minute, but I prefer to do it in advance, so it makes the assembly really easy. So that's it for the pickled onions, and then we'll come back and we'll put the dish together. All right, so we're back to finish our refried beans. These cooked at 194 Fahrenheit for about 12 hours, and you can see, well, maybe, hopefully you can see, that they mash really nice and creamy, just like a normal refried bean. If when you're starting to mash, they're crumbly, they're not done yet, so put them back in for a little bit longer. But it took me about 12 hours to get to this consistency. And so now all we're going to do is just refry them with a little bit of oil. What I did was confit some garlic, which also at 194, it cooks for about 10 hours. And I did that in canola oil. So we're going to actually refry these with that garlic infused canola oil to add a little bit of that essence to it. So let's head over to the stove. All right, got a couple tablespoons of canola oil here that have been heating up. The first thing we're going to do is just put an onion slice in there. You're going to get some popping because of the moisture in the onion, but we're going to let this get nice and caramelized. And what we're trying to do is infuse the onion flavor into this oil before we put the beans in. All right, then in go our beans that have already been mashed. See how nice and creamy, but these soak up that oil super fast. So we're going to add some of our garlic oil. Pinch of salt. One more mix. That's our refried beans all done. Okay, so now we're going to work on the tortillas. This is a crucial part of this dish. There's actually some controversy in Veracruz there was between my wife's grandmother and her sisters on the proper way to make a panucho. And the way that we do it, you need to puff up the tortilla, then you cut a slit in it, and then you stuff the tortilla with the beans and the eggs. So the dough mix for the tortilla is really important. You don't want it to be sticky, but it can't be too dry or it's not going to have enough steam to puff up. So we're just using regular corn flour. Maseca brand is popular. I also really like the Bob's Red Mill Masa Harina. So all I did was mix that over with some warm water until I felt that it was the right consistency. And then we shaped it. And we're going to cut into just small enough pieces that we can form it into a little ball, maybe about 1.25 inches. You don't want these to be too big because then they become unmanageable when you stuff them. So you're going to just roll that into a nice little ball. If you are more talented than me, you can certainly hand form your tortillas. I'm using a press because I am not talented. So we're going to just push that down. And you don't want to go all the way down so it's super thin. You want it to be still thin, but a little bit thicker will help it puff up a little better. So that is our finished tortilla. Let's head over to our griddle. I've had this preheating over medium heat. You can see it's smoking. So we know it's about 400 degrees with that canola oil. Just have a very light coating of oil on. We're going to just place our tortilla gently down. And the technique here is pretty important to get it to puff up right. So you want to let it cook on the first side for about 10 to 15 seconds. Pushing around the outside to make sure those edges have contact. then we're going to flip again. This one you can really see starting to puff up. There's nothing like a fresh tortilla. See this? Okay. And then once they puff, you want to do this part pretty quickly so they don't deflate. Just going to take the tip of a paring knife and we're going to just slide into in between the layers where it puffed up and just make a little hole. It only needs to be, a couple inches, but big enough to get a spoon in there. And then we'll kind of use our knife to hollow out the inside a little bit. It's going to feel like the tortilla is not quite all the way cooked through, which is okay because we're going to finish these in some hot oil. So you can see just a beautiful tortilla. All right, time to assemble. Just to summarize, we have our refried beans that were cooked at 194 degrees. Got our pickled onions that were also cooked at 194 Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes and then chilled. Got our hard-boiled eggs, also 194 Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. And then we also have just some shredded chicken breast here. I seasoned the chicken with salt and pepper. I cooked it at 145 Fahrenheit for about 4 hours, pulled it out and shredded it. And so you have this beautiful, moist, shredded chicken. Works out perfectly. And then, of course, our fresh tortillas that we puffed up and then cut the pouches in. So the assembly is pretty simple. All we're going to do, I like using this offset spatula. I'm going to take some of the refried beans and just pop them inside. And then we're going to kind of spread those out. Probably a couple tablespoons or so. All right. Then we're going to top those with a couple slices of hard-boiled eggs. Slide those guys in there. And I'm going to do one more. Okay, then put some chicken on top. And then some of our pickled onions. We can certainly add more of these later. Alright, so we're going to head over to the stove with these. I've got a little bit of canola oil, probably about 1/4 cup, that is heating up in a pan. We're going to heat that right till it starts smoking, so it's around 400, 425 degrees. Then we're going to drop these guys in carefully. You want a pretty thick layer so everything fries together, and we're going to put it in there for just about a minute, more or less depending on how hot your oil is, and till it gets this nice little crispy fried exterior. We'll pull it out and then we can feast. So let's head over. All right, and there we have it, our Panuchos de Veracruz. One thing I should have mentioned, I did retherm the onions and the chicken just a little bit. I just dropped it back in the sous vide bath for about 10 minutes because cooking these in the oil is going to fry the bottom, but it's not going to heat up that top. So make sure you retherm that so the whole thing is warm through. But man, I wish you could smell this right now. This is traditionally how it's served. You can garnish it with a little cilantro if you want. If you want to put a little cheese on it, go for it. I also want to try these with some sous vide shredded short rib. But I wanted to stay as traditional as I could. So I hope you enjoy this recipe, and we'll see you at the next showcase.
Mike,